The Zeppelin, king of the skies. Majestic, magnificent and luxurious. In the 20s and 30s of the last century, these imposing airships were the measure of all things. They interweaved high-tech, adventure, freedom and the dream of flying. With the Zeppelin fleet, it was possible for the first time to cross the Atlantic comfortably and cozily. Captain and crew became heroes, the technology became the future, and the interior became a style icon. The Zeppelin project was zeitgeist and spirit at the same time. Around 100 years later, watch pioneer Willy Burke and his designer Werner Uch are reviving the myth and legend of the skies, not as a replica, but as a watch on the wrist. The Zeppelin zeitgeist becomes the pulse of your life. One of the most famous flights from the Zeppelin was across the Atlantic, which means we have to try to get the Atlantic into the housing. On the subject of the Atlantic, the following occurs to me. I've looked for the historical picture in which people are in the Zeppelin looking down through the panoramic window. It was the first time that passengers could travel in style and not by a drafty plane. What are they looking at? They're looking at water, at the Atlantic. They're seeing blue. Blue as a color is of course set directly. We absolutely have to implement these classic colors in the dial and in the band so that we can display the late wash style of the 50s. For the minimalism which we wanted to implement, I thought that we should take over segments like the arrow shapes from these struts. We will implement this in the form of an applique. Absolutely. For the minute track, I would again orient myself minimalistically on the steel cables, which are very fine, very thin. We definitely have to implement this three-dimensionally. We could implement the roof in the form of a curved dial and a curved glass. Try it. Werner Uch is now projecting the largest airship in the world onto the size of a €2 coin. A real challenge for him and the designer team. For the dial, I now came up with the idea that we would not convert this three-dimensionality into a curve, but with facets. This gives us the 3D effect, but also straight surfaces on the outside, which we then need for the segments that are very difficult to bend. It will look very classy and very special. Next, I arranged the minutes on the inside a bit atypically, so that we can then place the segments on the outside. Due to their roof shape, the filed nickel segments sparkle very nicely when you tilt the clock. That was imitated directly from the historical photos. This is the basis for the Atlantic design. The Zeppelin became world famous through its Atlantic flights. In the 21st century, its fame is being crowned in the form of a timepiece and is taking shape and form for the first time with this prototype. After the individual parts were manufactured according to the plans of the designer, these are now being assembled by a watchmaker. Willy Burke's vision becomes tangible for the first time in this small workshop, and the details are all important. What you can also see in our Zeppelin model of the Atlantic chronograph are the curves of the Zeppelin. The Zeppelin has a round shape, and you can see that again on these chronograph hands. You can also see the curvature of the Zeppelin as a curvature on the dial. And these large indexes are actually reproduced on the bevels, on the curvatures of the dial. In this scene, the imagination of the designer and the know-how of the technician engage with each other like cogs and finally make their creation tick. However, one does not wear this gem purely in order to know the time. No, one puts on the Atlantic for its history. Not many people need a watch these days, but many want to be part of the history, which is continued with this piece of jewelry. By wearing this watch, one can feel a touch of nostalgia on their skin.
Die Uhr wäre jetzt fertig.
The clock would be ready now. Let's see which band would fit there. We have now implemented this beautiful deep blue C in the dial, and now we have to find this elegant furniture in this beautiful brown cognac tone, this feel-good tone for the watch, and have it made. Willy Burke has much heritage behind him. His Zeppelin watches are produced by one of the most traditional watch manufacturers in Germany. Clocks, as well as their necessary tools, have been made in Ruhr in Thuringia since the 19th century. During the GDR era, over 10,000 employees produced countless collections. After turbulent times, the company now feels the calm and level-headed hand of the watch pioneer and is opening a new chapter. Willy Burke has once again correctly recognized the signs of the times. Time has always played a big role in my life and had its roots in flower power. I never lost sight of the time, even on vacation. I had a wonderful few weeks in Ibiza when I was young. What did I see there? The beautiful ladies walking along the beach, each one with a big watch. That then inspired me to implement this idea. His wing flap not only creates new watch creations, but also keeps people busy. With the employees, he can fall back on a long history and immeasurable know-how in watchmaking. Thanks to Willy Burke, the time has not yet run out in Ruhr. You can feel that with every impulse. Here we come to the heart of the matter, assembly. Watches have been made here for over 100 years. Ruhr was the center of the watch industry in the new federal states. Besides Zeppelin, other creations are also produced here, not only with the legendary airship, but also with other brands. You get a piece of history on your wrist in addition to the watch. That's Willy Burke's philosophy. With all of our watches, it has always been very important to me to convey emotions, freedom, adventure, individuality. We implemented that with the Zeppelin. The Zeppelin, as they still say today, was the most elegant form of travel. That is why we brought the Zeppelin brand onto the market. And it is just the most elegant way to embody the time. But there is more to it. Whether in Ibiza, New York, Paris or London, you always have an exciting and fascinating story to tell.